In this video, I'm going to show you how to retouch and soften skin in Lightroom Classic. There are a lot of ways that you can retouch skin outside of Lightroom, so using apps like Photoshop with differing levels of complexity, but this is simply how I retouch my portraits without leaving Lightroom Classic. Also, Lightroom has recently added a whole bunch of features and tools that make this whole process so much faster and easier. So do make sure before we jump into this tutorial that you are on the latest version of Lightroom, and that way your whole interface will look very similar to mine and you won't get lost. Here we are inside of our Lightroom catalog. We have a beautiful photo of our model Lally here that we're going to be working on. Now, I've already made some adjustments to this photo. I've adjusted the exposure and the white balance. You can make those adjustments now or later, it's totally up to you. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is come up to the top right corner of this little panel here in Lightroom, and we're going to click on this far right icon, which is our mask. So if we click on this, now we get this additional panel that pops up. And you'll notice that right down in the bottom, it's actually detected our subject here. So if we click on this, we can see that we have a nice clean mask of Lally. So if we click on this, we've got all these different options here. We can select the entire person. We can choose the face, skin, body, eyebrows, all sorts of different stuff. So for this, we're just going to be selecting face, skin. So click on that, make sure that's ticked, and then hit create mask. Okay, so what we're actually going to be doing here is using this mask to soften the skin. And you'll notice that Leon's face is turned red, and that is because we're actually seeing what is being selected. You can also change the color of this mask at any time if you want, using this little button here. I just like to keep it red because it stands out and it looks good. So if I actually hold the spacebar key, then you'll see my cursor turns into a magnifying glass, which means that I can now zoom in on this image. I like to zoom in at around 50% on an image like this so that the face fills the screen and it's not like I don't have to move around and adjust my view all the time. Like if I was at 100%, then I would sort of have to go down here to see the chin and then move up to see the forehead, those kinds of things. So leave it at 50%. Now you will hopefully notice that this mask is actually bleeding in over Leon's eyes, into her lips a little bit, completely over her nose. And these are details that we actually don't want to do any softening on, because if you do soften those edges and those details, it tends to look a little bit fake. We want to go for a subtle effect that just enhances the portrait. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to subtract those objects from the mask. And how we do that is we come back over to the right-hand panel here and we click on this mask, and then it gives us two buttons at the bottom, add and subtract. Now we want to click on subtract and then select the brush. And this is going to give us a lot more control over the image. So if we select brush, we've got this icon on the cursor that is essentially a minus. So we can use this to subtract from our mask. Make sure that you copy these brush settings on the right hand side. Everything except for the size should be the same. So 100, 100, 100 for feather, flow, and density. And then we're just going to adjust our size. You can do this on your mouse by scrolling up and down, and that will adjust the size, or you can use this little slider here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush over the eyes here and make sure that the eyelashes aren't selected as well. I'm going to do the other eye. You don't have to be like super accurate with this. You can be a little bit rough if you want. And then I'm actually going to deselect the eyebrows as well from this mask. And then the details and corners and edges around the nose. At any time, if you want to add back to the mask, if you've, let's say you make a mistake and you accidentally go over a part that you do want as part of the mask, you can hold the Alt or Option key and then actually paint that back in. So you can subtract and add at any time. Now we're going to go over the lips as well, just around the edges, and make sure that we don't have any edges that are going to be softened. So the next step with this mask still selected is to come down to this bottom part of the panel and find the texture slider. So this is going to help us achieve this sort of softened look. Now, if I drag this slider, you'll see that our overlay is going to go away, and that's so that we can see what we're doing. And if I go all the way to -100 and then I turn this mask on and off, you'll see the softening effect happening here, but it's a little bit too much. Remember, we want to keep it nice and subtle. So I would usually aim, depending on the photo, for around -50 to -60, but it's totally up to you how far you want to go with this. So if we show before and then after, you can see that our skin is softened really nicely. If you want a little bit more softening effect, you can also play with the sharpening, so bringing the sharpening down, but in my opinion, that kind of looks a little bit over the top. And you can also reduce the clarity, but be very careful with that because it can go overboard really super quickly. And while the skin is nice and soft and it's done a pretty good job, there are some blemishes on Leon's face that I would like to remove. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the spot healing tool, which is this band-aid icon right in the center at the top. I'm going to click on this and we have 3 options. So we have the content aware removal, and we have healing, and then clone stamp, pretty sure. Yes, clone stamp. The content aware removal is actually new in this version of Lightroom, and it is my go-to from now on. I'm also going to have an opacity of 100. And then as with the mask, I'm just going to adjust the size with my scroll wheel on my mouse. So what I'm going to do now is go into 100%. And then if I hold the space bar, I can move the photo around as well to get a little bit more control. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into some of these larger blemishes on the face, and I'm just going to click on them once, and Lightroom is going to use the surrounding pixels to fill in that area. And it does a pretty good job of removing any parts of the photo that you want to remove. If you want a little bit more control, you can click on any one of these selections that you've made. And if you hold the Command key and then draw a box, you can actually choose where you want those pixels for the content aware removal to be sampled from. So if I want Lightroom not to do any guesswork, I can just click on this selection that I've made and then draw a little box a little bit further up the nose, and then tell Lightroom, I want you to sample from this area. So you can definitely play around with this a little bit if your selections aren't super accurate. Last step, I'm just going to add my Lightroom preset. So this is the Burly preset, and it's a little bit lighter. And I'm just going to adjust the exposure down a little bit. And that for me is pretty much a finished image. So that's pretty much it. Super quick and easy. As I said, there's lots of different ways that you can retouch an image. You can have a lot more control if you use Photoshop, but if you just want something really quick and easy, maybe you're just posting to social media, your photos aren't necessarily going to end up on a magazine cover, then this works perfectly for me. If you have any questions for me as well, leave them down in the comment section below. I'll try to help out as many people as I can down there, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, especially behind the scenes from photo shoots like this. Get to see like everything that goes into a shoot. I do a lot of those kinds of videos, so subscribe, like the video, do all that good stuff, and I will see you guys in the next video.